Okay, we also are in the company of Dr. Richard Munang, who is going to be contributing from Kenya. Good evening, Doctor, and welcome.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. It's a great pleasure to be connected, and I look forward to a very inspiring and motivational discussion that we're going to have.
Okay, let's get over to Dr. Richard Amuna. Dr. Richard, you are not in Cameroon, but you have been observing what is happening in Cameroon and other African countries. Where are we not? Where are we missing the point when it comes to good governance?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Liu, and to the panelists. I mean, they've already touched on most of the aspects that I am going to touch on. The reality is this: good governance is not a responsibility of either government or only citizens. It's a responsibility of each and everyone. When you look across the entire African continent, including Cameroon, I would like to use this African proverb, which is that one who loves will love you even if you are in debt. What does that mean? If you want to know those who truly love you, just tell them you've lost your job today or you've lost a business. And what this tells us is that if actually we love the continent and even country, then definitely we have to do what is needed to be able to address the challenges. And if you put statistics in perspective here, we're talking at a time where if you look at the perception index of corruption, Cameroon is 27%, perception index of corruption across the entire African continent. Cameroon is 32%. What does that tell you? That Africans actually perceive Africa as better than Cameroon. But these are perceptions, and these are either through feelings or conjuncture or facts. What am I trying to drive at? I'm trying to drive to the point that if you look at the country today and you look at the highest growing number of Africans in the West, Cameroon is actually moving at a very high rate. And if you look at the reasons, it's also about sending remittances home. And if you look at the remittances that have been sent back to Cameroon, $255 million US each and every year. But do you know something? Cameroon actually sends out money to neighboring countries, especially Nigeria, $2.5 billion US. And so the question is if Cameroon is sending out money, that means that Cameroon is rich and actually sends this money to Nigeria, just 2.5 billion. So the point I'm bringing this up is that we cannot be able to achieve good governance if each and every citizen doesn't play his or her role. So the question then becomes, what are the elements of good governance, which pretty much goes down to the attitude of the people. The people we have in government are not from space. They are from the same society in which we live in today. The attitude starts from our homes. And so sometimes we speak as if people will come from space to solve the problem. So the point is we must be able to meet one another midway. Government have a role, a responsibility to create the enabling environment, and citizens have the role to also take responsibility. As a result of this, if we abdicate responsibility just to the citizens or to the government, we will keep blaming one another, and this is not going to solve any problem. So therefore, we need to do three things. The first thing is, who are we in terms of the value that we can be able to offer? And value is actually solving problems. There's nowhere on earth where there are no problems. And sometimes we speak as if we want an idealistic world without actually addressing the realistic issues. That world doesn't exist. The world as it should be can only be created from the world as it is. And so we must inspire one another, and especially the young people. We are talking in Cameroon with a population over 70% that is youthful. We need to inspire the young people to see themselves as solutions provider, not complainers in chief, and inspire them and give them the opportunity. The second aspect that we need to actually look at is that if you have the best leader on earth, without a willing citizenry to seize opportunities, no matter the number of policies, the number of incentives you put in place, nothing will change. There is power in passion. And what a passionate person can do actually is worth more than what $1 trillion US can do. So in essence, good governance, patriotism, international dependence, all those things cannot be achieved apportioning blame. But we need an introspection. What can I as an individual offer? And as I offer that solution, can I then be able to ask for more to close a gap? Not asking everything, fooling arms and blaming and complaining, because complaining and blame game doesn't trade in any stock exchange anywhere in the world. It actually exposes one's weakness rather than a strength. Do I mean that we should not blame or complain? As you complain, show what you have done and show the gap, so that at least you can then be able to show that if I was able to be supported or guided, I can then be able to close this gap and move forward. And I think this is the attitude we need across the entire African continent, an attitude of leveraging strengths, not weaknesses, an attitude of working with one another, not dividing one another in terms of tearing that one another. When people go up, we try to pull them down. That syndrome needs to go away. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Muna. We are coming back to you with the notion of patriotism and good governance. Now, many Cameroon and other African nations are suffering because of wastage of resources. Resources are put at our disposal, and we spend time wasting them. When we waste these resources through our inability to effectively, efficiently utilize them, put them into use, or through the stealing, how do we expect the nation to develop when the capital is in our bank accounts?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Liu, and to the panelists. And first of all, let me start off by building on what has already been said.
Okay.
Patriotism is the natural consequence of citizenry to understand their responsibility. And I think, as Dr. Nick and others alluded to, we need to understand what is really the purpose of life, right? Our purpose is to be useful, to do that which is right, to do that which touches the lives of people beyond our immediate family. That is the sole responsibility of why we live. And unless we understand that, then we will continuously blame one another as we abdicate responsibility to others. That said, we need to also recognize that the most patriotic citizens in Africa, and in Cameroon in particular, are our mothers in villages. They are the informal sector. They are our youth. The informal sector of Cameroon contributes 50% to the GDP of the country. That is the highest in the entire African continent. We don't even talk about these. We need to take pride in that and thank our mothers in communities, in villages. It is those young people who are graduating from university and try just to develop their own enterprises without even upfront finance and try to survive. They're contributing to the bigger picture of the country. They're contributing to the GDP. That said, there is then an opportunity to then be able to turbocharge and supercharge this informal sector because they have challenges. And that is where we need to really focus to discuss. It contribute 50% to the economy of the country, and they are equated to almost be the middle. They are the middle class, what we call in developed economies the middle class of Cameroon. But they have nothing, but they build their resilience. But when you look at now your question on resource wastage, let's start from the perspective that we are losing 25%. Cameroon is losing 25% of its agricultural produce. If you take just tomato, wasting tomato, not adding value to tomato, just adding value to tomato will generate over 2 trillion CFA every year and create over 1.5 million jobs. Those are the statistics that we have. The point then is that is money that we are losing. Those are jobs that we are losing. And as a result of that, then we are losing leverage from the perspective that, because Cameroon is not an island, right? Africa is not an island. We need to be competitive in a global space. And you can only be competitive when you do what I call value addition. If you don't add value, then you'll be exporting employment and importing unemployment. That is what is happening. And then resources will be wasted. But to answer your question specifically, I started off by saying that the attitude of the citizenry is the most important aspect. If the attitude is blame game, then we will end up blaming, and that is not going to produce a product. I also said that there's no stock exchange market where blame game and complaints trade. That's a fact. So what does that mean? If we do not inspire our people to start to have the attitude that we need to be useful, that we need to solve problems and generate and create enterprises, purposeful enterprising dimension is what each and everyone needs to embrace. Whether you are a government, working in NGOs, or being a civil servant, it doesn't matter. We need to become enterprising. And from that perspective, we will start to see value for money and create enterprises that generate resources. So when we borrow and then export without adding value, you lose your foreign exchange, you lose opportunities. And then the attitude of inspiring citizens to become productive and create enterprises. And I'll keep using this word, create enterprises. Like we're speaking today, 7,000 Cameroonians die every year as a result of indoor pollution. Do you know the reason? They depend on fuel wood. But that's an opportunity that can actually be able to be closed by retooling the skills of young people to turn agricultural waste into fuel briquettes. And that is a market, $300 million only in Cameroon. So when you don't look at opportunities to create a market and generate revenue, then any little money that comes in will always have appetite that at least it can be used for other alternatives. And even sometimes when it is invested for the right reasons, not in areas that are catalytic, agricultural sector, and inspiring and empowering the young people, then we will end up complaining and we will not have dividends or revenue that comes from where the investments are. So there are two things that need to be done very quickly. We must put our youth at the center of Cameroon's transformational development. The youth are Cameroon's powerhouse. They are passionate, they are vibrant, they are entrepreneurial, and they have the ingenuity to devise enterprises. During COVID, it was Cameroonians that developed an app called Tutri that was connecting young people to classrooms and even teachers. It was Cameroonians that developed an app called Oxygenate that was actually replacing, connecting people to ventilators. It was a Cameroonian, even before COVID, that developed the cardiopad. These things we don't communicate, but we talk sometimes as if Cameroon is at a standstill. No, if you do not communicate your progress, you can never make progress. Does it mean that we don't have to talk about the challenges? Absolutely not. Challenges are disguised opportunities. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Doctor. We're coming back to you very shortly. Dr. Munang, we are talking about international dependence here. It's something that Africa has been fighting against for a very, very long time. How do we overcome this?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Leo, and to the panelists as well. Let me start by saying this. If you externalize everything about your economy, then you will be in the biggest risk ever. Externalization is the biggest risk to any system. And when you look at the continent of Africa today, including Cameroon, importing food worth $35 billion each and every year, that, as I said earlier, is importing unemployment and exporting employment. And then on top of that, across the continent, we are losing food worth $48 billion 45 to $48 billion. That said, I want to build on the point that Dr. Nick and Apostle and they have alluded to. The reality is this. If you look at the entire African continent today, employing over 65% of the workforce in the agricultural sector, if you come down to Cameroon, over 70% of the entire population is actually in the agricultural sector. It's employed in the agricultural sector. And agricultural sector contributes about 32% of the GDP. You can only compete from your position of strength. And ignoring this will bring no magic. And agricultural sector is the only sector that can lift people from the bottom of the pyramid. Minerals will not do it. They only contribute 3.5% to the GDP of the country. That said, what do we have as a country? If you look at the reality of the world today, and let's put this in perspective, we're talking shocks in the international market, especially food security when it comes to wheat importation as a result of the war. But we are forgetting to know that we are going to face a lot of emergencies. We faced COVID. We were not prepared for it. And there is an elephant in the room called climate change, which is already reshaping the contours of the entire continent, especially Cameroon. In the next 8 years, the GDP of Cameroon, from the statistics we do have, will shrink by 10%. And in the next 25 years, if nothing is done to build resilience of the country, it will shrink by 50%. That is a lot. So what do we have to do here? We need to look at what we have. And cassava is Africa's goal. Cassava is an insurance crop. It's a climate resilient crop. And it can produce up to 300 products. And across the entire African continent, one point that has not actually been mentioned, but I'm going to bring it up here, is that if you look across the entire African continent, like, we only trade on food products 20% across the entire continent. We import wheat as a continent worth 15 billion US dollars. Can you imagine that? A continent that is poor, at the same time, importing food, in this case, wheat worth 15 billion US dollars. So we need to do three things here as a country and a continent. The first is, as I started saying earlier, the GDP of Cameroon, 50% of the GDP of Cameroon is contributed by the informal sector. Our mothers, our young men and women contributing to the GDP of the country. They need financial incentives. And I think this is a very logical economic turbocharging approach that needs to be applied. We have cooperatives. The beauty of Cameroon is that actually every community do have cooperatives. Can they be provided financial incentives to actually boost them, especially those who are engaged in these sectors, the agricultural sector, to add value? Can we be able to incentivize our young people who are coming up with solutions, simple solar dryers that are decentralized to mothers in communities to dry their vegetables, to dry their potatoes, to dry their cassava, that if you are doing that, you can be given an incentive, a financial incentive and tax breaks that you don't pay taxes if you are actually engaged in that. This is not rocket science. We're seeing this and doing this across the continent. The other aspect that is actually urgent is market incentives. Disincentivizing what is imported and incentivizing what is produced locally so that people can eat local food. Can we be able to put increased taxes on what is imported, especially food? And then those who are adding value to cassava that can produce 200 products, that will then help not only boost the economy, but start to put food on the table of so many people. Because at the end of the day, let me end by saying this. We're talking about good governance. If you tell a hungry child that you gave him or her food yesterday, that child at the moment is hungry. It means nothing to that child. Fundamentals are non-negotiable. We must be able to ensure that we empower people to be socio-economically viable so they can put money in their pockets and food on the table. Then they will know that there is value. They will know that at least if they can be given an alternative, their usefulness will mean something. If we miss this, we'll have a long way to go. Thank you.
Good evening to you, Doctor. I will end with you, Doctor out there in Kenya. We would say that we are very happy to have had you in today's edition of the program. Tomorrow, we're going to be looking at the situation of the scarcity or the hike in prices of some basic commodities, especially bread. If it's possible for you to join us in tomorrow's debate. Are you taking the rendezvous?
Oh, thank you very much. I will get back to you, but just to say that it's been a great joy to me to be part of this amazing conversation, and just so we know that we produce what we don't consume and consume what we don't produce. So definitely, as we look at the prices tomorrow, okay, that should be something to have in mind.
Okay, we want to say thank you to you, not forgetting you watching us across the globe. Stay blessed. Bye-bye.